going to try to tighten up each of these next panels, right, Moderator Odell and speakers? So they're going to really share some of their thoughts. We're really moving on sort of a more granular or more specific level around active conservation projects and activities that are happening in the region. We're going to have this session, and we're going to not have that second break, so we're going to go very quickly into the next session after that. So everybody stay tuned for that and get ready to move on that. And so with that, I will actually turn it over to Jay Odell. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you, Tony. My prepared remarks are only about half an hour. No. So we're shifting gears a little bit here after understanding and learning about some of the higher up policy level work that drives and informs a lot of the work that's being done and needs to be done, to work that requires raincoats and boots on the ground a little bit more, work that's quite tangible. And maybe you'll see a couple, as the speakers share their work, there's a couple themes that might come out, that science is most effective when it's evidence-based, that conservation action needs to be evidence-based, informed by science, that what we do here in the Mid-Atlantic and what we still need to do, the signal of that work is carried to the region, from local watersheds to the region and to the globe through the movements of migratory species like shorebirds and fish like sturgeon and shad. And thinking about baselines and how everything is downstream of the ocean, and thinking about baselines that go back hundreds and hundreds, thousands of years with the indigenous peoples that were here and are still here. So without any further ado from me, from left to right here, our great panel includes Robert DiGiovanni, who is the founder and senior scientist of the Atlantic Marine Conservation Society, Joe Capella, the natural resource director for the Pamunkey tribe, a sovereign nation, one of the federally recognized tribes of Virginia, and Christie, the lead shorebird biologist for DNREC, the Delaware's Natural Resource Management Agency. So without any further ado, Robert.
Well, thank you. And I just want to start off, I understand that we're behind schedule. My mom was always late going everywhere, and she would start off on a project being 30 minutes late and say, don't worry, I only have to make 2 stops. So I don't think I'm going to help speed this up. So, all right. So as mentioned, I'm Rob DiGiovanni. I work with the Atlantic Marine Conservation Society. Our mission is promoting marine conservation through action. That sounds pretty profound, but it's really your action and the public's action. It's really working with the community to try and get them to understand what it is that we do. So our areas kind of range across. We work in New York, and we work in New Jersey, and we work in Connecticut and Rhode Island. So the New York Bight is one of the areas we work, but we promote conservation by doing research with seals and trying to understand the health of those animals. We do community outreach, so we do beach cleanups. Our whole idea is that we can go out, clean the beach, and then talk to people about what their questions are, and then get them to do some work while they're there, because that's, once again, what my mom taught me. Come on over, clean the house, do something. So we try to follow that path. We also do critical event response. We have a 3,000 square foot building in West Hampton Beach that we brought online right during COVID when all the facilities were closing down. That we were able to house 20 Kemp's Ridley sea turtles starting in 2020, and every year we've received cold-stunned animals from New England, and just recently from the Turtleback Zoo here, they were struck by lightning, had a fire. They called us at 10:30 at night and asked us if we can take 5 of their turtles to help them out, so we met them at 4 o'clock in the morning, and they're in our facility now with one of their teammates that have been rotating through. So our goal was really to try and prepare for these crises that we hope never happen. Then I will say, well, they tend to happen. So it's not our fault. It just happens to be that we're around there. Many of the animals, you probably heard all this, but these are the animals that we deal with. Everybody's familiar with the North Atlantic right whale. The minke whale is one of the other animals that we encounter. Humpback whale and fin whale. I pause on this for a second to say, seeing the right whales, okay, it's common. Minke whales, fin whales, that was common 30 years ago. That's what whale watching was looking at, was fin whales and minke whales here. Now we've seen a change where we're looking at not only those animals, but humpback whales, which is one of the changes that we started to see as far back as 2007. Sperm whales are one of the things that I point out. People are saying, hey, this is new, we've seen it here. And sure, it's great. This is a picture, and I just love this picture. It was an aerial survey I was doing with Northeast Fisheries Science Center. Tim Cole took this photo on a project that we were leading. This is blue water right off the shelf break. It's amazing. I show this because we usually, when we're doing AMAPs, we fly a line transect. We don't break if we know what the animals are. We broke, we were circling, taking all these cool pictures, and the whole team was absolutely silent. And finally I said, I guess we should get back to work. And they said, yeah, we thought you were having a stroke because you never let us get off transect. So the reason why I point this out is there are cool things that are happening, but there were cool things that were happening years ago, because this is on the right, there's a picture of what we did when we were doing whale watching with Okinos back in the 90s, and we started to see sperm whales there. So thinking these changes might not be what you recall, what I point out is that they're usually offshore. So what's very different now is we're seeing a lot more animals from shore. We all heard about the new species of whale, but the big thing here, what I want to talk about is the more you look, the more you find, the more you investigate animals. This is where strandings come into play. You have more time to look at animals. You have more time to say, hey, this looks unusual. One of these things doesn't look like the other, and then you start taking samples, and then you can find things. So the value of what stranding investigations, and it was great to hear in the last panel someone talk about stranding data and stranding investigations. Sorry, I'm looking right at you when I'm saying that. I was looking all over, but it was great to hear that people are actually looking at that. You should turn that back. That's going way too fast right there. So I point this out because, well, everybody likes graphs and they're cool. But looking at the 80s, where you saw back in New York, these are data from strandings in New York, you could see they were very infrequent. Beginning of what strandings were occurring, you saw that the green was really sea turtles, the red is seals, and the blue would be cetaceans. Green was sea turtles because we had, well, a green sea turtle at some point, so I thought that was pretty appropriate. Red was seals because it basically doing seal response and seal rehab was very costly, and it always put us in the red, so that's where we got that color from. The blue was for cetacean just because, well, we had to pick one of the other colors that people that are, I just realized that are colorblind can't see this. So all these years I've used the wrong graph. But the key here is looking at how those things have changed. In the 80s, it was sea turtles. In the 90s, it became seals that became predominant in our area. And then more and more now we're seeing cetaceans that are here. And so we're seeing these changes, and we don't have enough time to go into a lot of the details as to why, but I point this out for people down the coast and in Virginia. What we're seeing back then is probably what you're starting to see now. So there's no reason to start not preparing for that. So whales, that's what people want to talk about. We show these pictures. I want to point this out. I am never happy when we have a dead whale on the beach. I'm more happy when we see live whales. But I am happy that we're able to have a team that we can work together. We work with the Shinnecock and the Unkachugs to come out. We perform a ceremony for every one of these whales that we can get out here. But the interesting part about this is you're looking at the bottom are two humpback whales. The top right is actually a minke whale, and the left is actually a sperm whale that's stranded alive. And so these all come up with unique reasons and a unique understanding. But the thing that I really want to mention is reporting of these events and reporting of sightings and getting that information in real time is critical. This is an event that happened during COVID in July. It was a humpback whale that was up by Ambrose Channel, and it was entangled in gear. And we went out there with the Center for Coastal Studies. We worked with the New York State DEC, the Army Corps of Engineers. We had a lot of people out there. Center for Coastal Studies did amazing work. This was in 3,900 pounds of gear in about 80 feet of water. You can see that we had to pull it up, disentangle the animal. I say we. I took the picture. They did the work. But the thing that I want to point out here is this is the image that I had without the boat when I first went out there to assess what the animal was there. The animal was treading water for at least 4 days before we did this. And so it could be missed. And the amount of sightings that we got were very few because people didn't report that. So had this not gone reported, that animal would not have survived. Fortunately, it was able to be disentangled. Center for the Coastal Research and Education Society of Long Island, Artie's group, actually saw the animal off a whale watch like a month later and then a year later. So this animal was going out doing its thing. So we talk about this. This is what I actually saw when the animal was out there for days. So what's happening with whale strandings? So we started to look at whale strandings, and we wanted to compare whale strandings in New York to whale strandings up and down the eastern seaboard. You can see from the map on the left, and I apologize for these maps. We had some issues with ArcGIS and ESRI migrating from what I use, which is ArcMap, to ArcPro, and so So yeah, so I couldn't update this map. But this one here is showing that we have them along the coast, we have them where ports are. But also what I did is started to look at a 3-year rolling average for these animals to say, hey, what are we really seeing and are we seeing trends? And what you can notice is there's a couple of years that we actually did have some peak. We started Atlantic Marine Conservation Society in 2016 to investigate causes of mortality, and 2017 is when 3 unusual mortality events were declared for the humpback, the right whale, and the minke whale. Now, the thing about this is that you can see that there's fluctuation. You can see that last year was the busiest year for large whales, but I also want to make sure that we take a step back and look at some of these trends that we've seen. Back in the early days, my turn of the century, we could say that now. We started to see a lot more of the strandings were up in Cape Cod area, and then we saw that the area of New York Bight was starting to heat up from 2007 to 2015, and then it really heated up in the most recent years. So we're seeing that trend, but we're also, what we don't really speak about too much and what we really need to get more real time is the opportunistic sighting, but also the sightings of other programs that are out there just saying, hey, we're seeing it. The right whale aerial surveys, they put out a survey every day when they go up so we can see animals are in the area. That helps us understand this narrative. So we are seeing these animals in the area. It's not surprising. When I used to go out 30 years ago on a whale necropsy, actually the longest distance prior to 2007 time between events was 619 days between whale stranding events. When we went to 2007, we would get 1 to 3 a year. In 2017, we were having a whale stranding event somewhere between 30 and 14 days. So we were having 14 animals a year come up. That was when the unusual mortality was happening. 2016 was a larger number of animals or more animals that came up. But one of the things that happened is we had a lot more offshore reporting of animals that were floating that would normally not be investigated. So about 11 of those animals seem to be animals that were reported because there's more effort out there reporting what we're doing, which is bad but good because at least now we're documenting what we probably don't see out there. And the reason why I point that out, it's almost like I put this in order so that we can go to the next topic, is this. This is an animal that was offshore in 2020. It was a humpback whale. I know it doesn't look like rough seas for you people that go out on the water, but to tow an animal in, it was pretty rough. It was not good, so we realized it was too far offshore. We couldn't tow it in. So we put a carcass tag or a buoy on it so we can track it. And what we can see on the bottom right is the track of that animal that actually a week later showed up on the west side of Block Island. Interesting note is it was never called in as a stranded animal because nobody goes there. So keep in mind that we're looking at trying to get stranding data, trying to get real time. We are putting a lot of effort in, so we would expect also to see more animals that are here. We don't do it this way because nobody's that strong, but we use heavy equipment, so we have to work with the towns and municipalities, but we do have to secure the animal. The one on the right is an animal that came up in Lido Beach. It was a 44-year-old animal, so working with the groups that go out and do whale watching and do this to understand what these animals are helps tell the narrative, but it would be good to know what these animals are doing. Once again, humpback whales and right whales, entanglement, vessel strike are leading causes of mortality. The one on the top is a minke whale, and it seems like it's more of a biological processes that they're having. So we're finding some lesions in the brain. So part of our investigation is showing that although we're having increased numbers, we're having increased numbers of multiple animals. This is a summary of what I was going to say is we've had 102 animals since 2017 that came up in the New York Bight, putting it in perspective for New York. We had about 187 in the last 40 years. So a majority of them have come up. We can't investigate every animal because we only have limited resources to do that, but also it's not always accessible. We've had animals you just can't get down there like the west coast of Block Island, west side of Block Island. And this year was an interesting year because we only had 7 large whales. I say that, not saying, hey, great, that we have large whales that washed up, but we had 4 minkies and 2 fin whales and 1 sei whale. And the sei whale came in on the bow of a cruise ship into New York Harbor, and we were able to work and get that off. Obviously, we have seen that in the past. But the 2 fin whales, what's interesting, one of them was a 62-foot female that had evidence of broken bones and basically evidence of vessel strike. But why it's interesting to me is that that's what we used to see when we saw fin whales. And that's what's different about this year is that fewer of them are humpbacks right now. So just thinking about that. And just this is really busy data just because I want to show you that we can actually do something with data. But the reality here is looking back to what we've seen in the past, don't get worried about the numbers other than we're seeing that we have animals stranding every month of the year. We know we have whales here every month of the year. That's common. That's, not a surprise. We have strandings. In 2001, we had what we had in 2023, where we had an increase in number of strandings during December of the previous year, January, February, March, all the way to June. June 18th, 2001 was the last stranding of a right whale calf that was hit by a vessel right outside of Jones Inlet. And so we have seen them change during different times of year when they're moving through here. We need to get more real-time data to say, hey, are we having animals here? Maybe, hey, keep an eye out, things are going to happen. But those animals were fin whales and sei whales, and as well as the right whale. So just giving you an idea, this is the timeline on the bottom about the frequency, days between those events. In 2017, it was 26 days, but in 2023, it was around 14 days. That's averaging it out. We are looking at that a lot more closely, but the reality here is that we are seeing whales on a more regular basis, and it requires us to work a lot more with our community members. And because I just want to point out that I never talk about what everybody tells me to talk about, I'm just going to throw this in here real quick because I'm out of time. We are also doing seal health assessment to understand what these animals are doing here, because the next question when we first started to say, let's investigate mortality was, okay, what are these animals are here, how are they dying, what can we do about it? But also we're seeing seals and we're seeing them move down the coast. So we have a project here, we're working in the Northeast, we've already worked down in Virginia, and we're going to be doing a project down here with Stockton looking at captures of these animals where we put satellite tags on and track them, and we can see that they move up and down, going right back to how they move. I think it's really appropriate. The bottom left slide is an animal that was a gray seal that was caught in Beverly, Massachusetts. They thought it was in trouble. They went and assessed it. It went back out into the wild. After leaving Mystic, by being rehabilitated in Mystic, went up to Beverly and then came all the way back down to Delaware Bay. So they move throughout this basin, so we need to think about these things. And I know you thought I would never end. You were looking, I saw that look. Thank you.
All right, we're ready for you, Kat. Oh, Joe?
Is it me next? Or?
I think
I'll help you out. I think it's Joe.
Joe, Capella, Pamunkey tribe. Take it away, Joe.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks for having me. Again, my name is Joe Capella. I'm the Natural Resources Director for the Pamunkey Indian Tribe. I am a non-native representative and advocate for the tribe. And I just wanted to come today and give you all a crash course on the work we've been doing. My department is pretty brand new. There's always been kind of a part-time natural resources person since federal recognition, which was around 2015, but it's never really been fully staffed by trained professionals. So this is kind of new for the tribe and a really exciting time. We're doing a lot of different things. And so, our mission as the Natural Resources Department is to leverage both modern research methods and traditional ecological knowledge to restore, preserve, and enhance the tribe and reservation's natural resources while honoring traditional practices and values, asserting tribal sovereignty and managing these resources, and building climate resilience for the future and for the community. We have a lot of, there's a million things we could go after as a department, but, coming in last January, we kind of identified some big bucket items that range from huge catastrophic climate disaster to more community programming and outreach. I just want to set the stage real quick. The Pamunkey Indian Reservation encompasses 1,200 acres on the Pamunkey River, adjacent to King William County, Virginia. It was established in 1646 via treaty with the Crown of England and reaffirmed via treaty of Middle Plantation in 1677. But obviously, Pamunkey folks have been on this land since time immemorial, making this one of the last pieces of land in the contiguous U.S. where indigenous folks have resided on since, as long as we can understand time. So it makes it a really unique place, but there are these overarching climate challenges. So, shoreline resilience and flooding is a huge goal for the department to try and, find solutions for. This is from Old Dominion University's visualization of, various sea level rise predictions and modeling, I think largely through NOAA. And this is showing, by by 2080, a huge portion of the reservation will be underwater. We have kind of in this area around the edges, we have these wetland forests, wet forests and marshes. And those pretty quickly are shown to be submerged, within the next 20 years or so due to sea level rise, as well as subsidence on the regional scale. But by 2080, you see the Pamunkey River encroaching on the uplands as well, and stormwater management will be a huge issue as well on the reservation. So this is obviously like a climate refugee situation for this community. And so how do we mitigate this disaster? How do we hold out and allow the communities to stay on this land for as long as possible? So in 2019, with Virginia Institute of Marine Science, the tribe came together with them to make a shoreline management plan. These two sites kind of are on the northwest edge of the reservation as well as the northeast, and use kind of a combination of single as well as full sills and living shorelines to try and protect these shorelines and minimize erosion due to sea level rise, storm events, et cetera. In 2019, they did a first phase of sills and plantings, but right now we're actually working on a $4 million grant for BIA's Tribal Climate Resilience Funds to expand on this work and finish some of these conceptual sills. So I just want to go back real quick. We're also going to be utilizing BIA's long-range transportation plan as well as Virginia Conservation Assistance Program to find various nature-based solutions for stormwater management. The only road in and out of the reservation is shown to be blown out by a creek once sea level rises. So, using the long-range transportation plan, we're hoping to develop, whether it's a bridge or raising that road, just improved infrastructure to ensure tribal access, especially during disaster. We're also working with, we've worked in the past with VCU Rice River Center to kind of do a large meta-analysis of the water resources tied to the reservation and the tribe. And we just applied for a second round of funding for a phase 2. That would kind of get more nitty-gritty on the localized scale, looking at wetland delineation. We would try and start measuring more localized subsidence and accretion because we know the reservation is sinking, as well as a better understanding of local groundwater dynamics. Just trying to understand, everyone there is on well and septic, and so what's at risk to saltwater intrusion, other contaminants related to large-scale agriculture on and around the reservation. So just, as a new department, we're really working on a large-scale inventory of our resources and to try and build a roadmap on how to move forward. The fish hatchery has historically operated as an American shad hatchery since 1918. Operations ceased around 2018, 2019 when the state of Virginia basically divested from American shad hatching and kind of stepped back and was like, whoa, like these efforts aren't really doing anything. You can see in 1992 and 94, both stocking and moratorium didn't really help populations come back. And so the state is kind of stepping back to reevaluate what the best move moving forward is. And so is the tribe. What do we do if we want to bring like meaningful work to the Chesapeake Bay ecosystem and the Pamunkey River, but shad aren't really recovering? Like, what options do we have? And so after a lot of discussions with different partners, we decided to go into a grant proposal with Virginia CZM, I know Will's here, to reopen the hatchery, retool it as a freshwater mussel hatchery. We want to kind of act as a rearing facility in partnership with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Harrison Lake National Fish Hatchery, where they have a huge mussel operation going on, and kind of get our foot in the door as in this burgeoning scientific realm of freshwater mussel management. Especially in Virginia right now, they're working on a statewide plan. But show that the Pamunkey tribe can help set the stage for a more resilient Pamunkey River, and also continue to set the example for indigenous knowledge and involvement in that restoration. And so why are we even thinking about mussels? Well, they provide river quality improvements. we would be restoring habitat. A lot of benthic organisms utilize mussel in basically infrastructure as habitat. And like I said, it's emerging science and policy, especially in Virginia right now with the statewide plan being set. And it also provides potential for a diverse multi-species operation in the future. We could be, hatching rearing mussels as well as raising the host species such as river herring and alewife, and helping get those species back into the Pamunkey River as well. They're also a cultural treasure for the tribe. These are screenshots from Dr. Speck back in 1915 showing mussel shells used for smoothing and shaping pottery, as well as powdered mussel shells that are used in tempering the pottery while they're in the pit. So, and here's just some Pamunkey citizens, working on that using a mussel shell. So. A big push for us right now is the community dump. In 2018, we went into an agreement with EPA during our first year of the General Assistance Program, which is meant to help tribes, that the tribe would close their open air dump in return for EPA helping them find funds to get it removed and restored. So the first assessment on the dump, EPA didn't really find anything that they were claiming was significant enough to use something like brownfields or Superfund money to remove. But we began a new phase with them in spring of 2024, where they found enough contaminants to move forward on a phase 2 assessment. So we're expecting some sampling to happen in October of this year. And hopefully they bring some money to the table, because this is what it looks like back in the wetlands. A lot of historic use of this dump. It was probably open for 100 years at least. So there's a lot of cross-contamination between the dump and the wetlands that we'd like to get settled. Water infrastructure is huge for the community because, like I said earlier, everyone is on well and septic, and being a very rural community, underserved, an environmental justice community, there hasn't been a lot of assistance to help folks dial in, what is the quality of their well water, what is the status of their infrastructure, their septic. Some folks are using just homemade septic that was buried in the ground back in the 50s and hasn't been assessed since. So we just went through Virginia Tech's water sampling clinic to get folks some individual water test results, help them better understand their water quality. We're working with folks to map out, this was with VCU Rice River Center, we mapped out down in this bottom right, everyone's well and septic, including abandoned, to better understand what infrastructure is out there and what kind of data can we collect to kind of get some kind of more relational data. So how can we connect contaminants that we see in groundwater with the infrastructure that we see on the ground, as well as the geomorphology, groundwater dynamics, et cetera. Land management, this one's near and dear to me because my background is in rangeland ecology and management. I think a lot about geomorphology and historical land use. And right now, if you look at the photo on the right, this is what a lot of the reservation looks like. There's a non-native farmer who comes, pays the tribe, not very much to participate in large-scale commercial agriculture. And not that the tribe is anti-agriculture, but, if we're going to be using this land, especially with how at-risk it is to various climate challenges, we want to be using it in a regenerative way as folks in the past have used it. So, historically, the tribe, everyone had a small farm, just raising food for themselves and their communities. There was bartering with hunting and farming. So, how do we get back to some kind of regenerative use, more food sovereignty, things like that? And what should agriculture's role be on the reservation? So we're working with various agencies and entities to better understand, again, our inventory, what we have, and what the roadmap for the future might be. So with NRCS, we've been developing a conservation plan, which would help enhance wildlife habitat and connectivity and expand buffers. It would also assist citizens with land management decisions on allotments. There's a lot of folks who want to take their land out of farming, because they don't really care about the money, but they don't really know what to do with that land, and they don't want to see it just go to invasives or just have trouble kind of getting it to where they want to be. So, hopefully we can lean on folks like NRCS or Virginia Department of Forestry to identify and manage these lands. We are doing more community-based programming, such as tree and native plantings on allotments, as well as improving public spaces to be more climate-friendly, and provide citizens with opportunities to opt in on conservation initiatives. So are we giving them a payout each year to basically put their land into easement? So. Community farm, I'll just go through this real quick. I mean, this is something that our environmental protection manager is really stoked about. She loves food sovereignty. She loves the idea of the community feeding itself internally. So we've been working closely with the Upper Mattaponi Indian tribe and some other folks who have a really amazing community farm pictured here. And just trying to understand, like, how do we bring this to the table for the Pamunkey people who are largely disconnected from their food and feel kind of tied down by the external farmer utilizing their land. Just briefly, some other work we always do, government-to-government consultation. We field a lot of requests for consultation. We do continued education and capacity expansion for the department, such as symposiums like this. Advocacy through various regional groups like the Virginia Ocean Plan that Will was talking about. So just making sure we're bringing that representation to the table for the tribe and getting that tribal perspective heard. Interdepartmental work with cultural resources, citizen services, looking at citizen housing, energy efficiency, the air quality of their home, as well as working on a natural resources advisory committee that tribal citizens will be able to engage in and help set priorities for our path forward. So thanks. So yeah, I just wanted to give you all kind of a crash course on what a burgeoning new tribal natural resources program looks like, and hopefully it provide you all with some insights. So thanks so much for having me.
Thanks so much. And now we have Kat Christie.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. I'm Kat Christie, and I'm the coastal waterbird biologist with Delaware State's Division of Fish and Wildlife. I got to the division about 1.5 years ago, so this past summer was my first full field season managing the Shorebird project, our migratory shorebird project, as well as a few others that we have along the coast. First, I wanted to draw your attention before I get any further in that this is a largely volunteer-based effort, so if any of you are interested in getting any wildlife fieldwork or you have any students that you'd be interested in sending our way, I have a QR code at the end with our volunteer interest form in case I could use this as a recruiting opportunity. We do our work down in Slaughter Beach, Delaware every May and early June, and this project's been going on since the late 80s, early 90s. It's a ton of recurring volunteers. It's kind of one big social group for 5 weeks of a lot of fun and a lot of kind of intensive shorebird monitoring and research work. So the deal with shorebirds in the Delaware Bay is we are internationally known for being an incredible large stopover location for shorebirds making their northbound migration from their wintering grounds to their breeding grounds. And the reason for that is over evolutionary time, this migration has been timed to meet up with horseshoe crabs spawning on the bay beaches. So tons and tons of horseshoe crabs come up on the beaches, both on the Delaware side and the New Jersey side of the Delaware Bay, lay a bunch of eggs, which you can see in that kind of grainy photo is all those little greenish gray circular things there. It's a carpet of eggs on all the beaches, and then a bunch of different shorebird species show up in huge numbers throughout that month to feast on those eggs as a major fattening source of energy to kind of refuel them for that long migration that they're making up into the Arctic for breeding. Now, because of this, and this, kind of very specific timing and specific food source, it's a sensitive ecosystem, and that has led to population crashes in the last few decades where horseshoe crab fisheries started being utilized by more and more industries. Specifically, it was kind of the use of horseshoe crabs as bait in the conch fishery that led to a massive horseshoe crab crash in the early 2000s and a subsequent huge decline in observed numbers of shorebirds in the bay, and then troublingly shorebirds everywhere. Delaware Bay, in the context of some of these enormous migrations, particularly the Rufa redknot subspecies here, Delaware Bay hosts an incredible proportion of those birds as they make their way up to the breeding grounds. So this is also, in addition to being kind of a high-risk area for these birds, it's also an incredible opportunity for science, because these species that range all across the entire hemisphere in these huge numbers, very varied and difficult to access wintering and breeding locations, all stop in this relatively tiny location right here in our backyard for at kind of a set time every year. We start our season on the same day every year, and it's tend to see the first red knot the first day. So we try to get as much out of that time period as we can, and I'm not going to go into recapping the entire 40 years of shorebird conservation in the Bay. I'm going to focus a little more on kind of where we stand now and where we stand in the context of work going on all over the world, and specifically in relation to ocean conservation. So most directly, the work that we do through our project informs horseshoe crab fisheries management for obvious reasons. We complete a series of structured surveys that get fed into a mark recapture model that calculates the number of shorebird, red knot specifically, but used as a proxy for all shorebirds, coming through the bay every year. And we're going to expand that analysis to other species within the next couple of years. And so we participate in, a multi-field collaborative series of technical committee meetings to help advise where the horseshoe crab fishery limits are going to be set every year, paired with trawl surveys and other things going on more directly with the horseshoe crabs. Our project doesn't try to mess with egg spawning or anything like that. There's so much going on with the birds in that 5-week period that we have them that we are very specifically focused on the birds. Shorebirds in general are also important indicators related to coastline habitat quality. They use coastlines for foraging and roosting, and because they're specifically migratory, shorebirds are utilizing coastlines all over the Western Hemisphere. They can be an important factor to consider in any kind of coastline habitat management. And also due to their long over-ocean flights, they're also a major target for investigating impacts of offshore wind. So I've got a little photo there of one of the tags we put out this year on a ruddy turnstone, solar satellite sunbird tags that we've been using we were able to watch our birds, what they did around the bay, get detailed migration routes up to the breeding grounds, and at least some of the tags that are still reporting have started to make it back down to South America, and we've got 3 or 4 birds, I think, reporting in Brazil already. So us specifically, the Delaware Shorebird Project is what we call the Delaware side of this work. There's a whole other kind of sister project on the New Jersey side of the beach, but we're usually so busy during that month we don't do a whole bunch of field trips between the two, so I can't entirely speak to their methods, but we do follow the same survey protocol so that we're able to get a fair sampling of the entire bay. This is a partnership between the state of Delaware, state of New Jersey, federal entities like USGS and U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and local volunteers, and majorly an international group called the Washwader Research Group that is they kind of pioneered a lot of these shorebird monitoring and capturing methods. So the state of Delaware roped them into our project in the late 80s, and we have not let them go since. We still have about 10 to 15 volunteers who come over from England every May, use all their PTO to come stay with us and do shorebird research, because they do this work all the time, using cannon nets to capture huge quantities of shorebirds, apply these plastic flags on their legs that are field readable. So if you see a shorebird out there with a flag, make sure to write down that color, code, and species, and you can report it to Bird Banding Lab. In North America, we apply lime green, or as pictured there, dark green flags, and so that's most of what we're seeing. But a bunch of different regions and countries have their own color and flagging scheme that we can use to understand individual life histories and then kind of expand that to species behaviors as a whole. While we're in Slaughter Beach every May with our big team, we are doing, like I mentioned, structured surveys with flock counts and a lot of individual marker resighting. And while we're out there doing individual marker resighting, we're also counting ratios of marked to unmarked birds, which is all going to get fed into that model that allows us to calculate a total number of birds passing through the bay. Because when you're dealing with a stopover site, no single day is going to tell you how many birds use the bay, and no total can tell you how many birds use the bay. It's a super dynamic system of different species arriving at different times. Everyone's arriving while others are departing, so you have to kind of figure in length of stays, arrival probabilities, departure probabilities. And so we just get this massive team out all over the bay, for 4 to 5 weeks straight to try to get as much resolution on what's going on out there as possible. Our goal, as we say it, is to see every flagged bird that's in the bay. That's how much time we're putting into it. It is thousands of hours every season, as we try to get one record of every flag that is out there. There's no way to know if we achieve it, but I think we get close based on the amount of data I get to clean at the end. This all gets incorporated into our passage population model and work with the horseshoe crab fisheries management decisions immediately after the season. And then while we're out there, we do a bunch of bonus projects, so things like that tagging work that I mentioned, to feed into multiple projects at multiple scales. We get some genetic data that we can use to establish links between wintering populations and breeding populations, and how those different populations and locations are trending individually. That's one of the huge benefits of the work that we do there, is we can genetically test birds as they come through Delaware Bay, and that allows us to detect trends in individual populations away from us. So we can tell you the difference. If we saw a lot more birds from Chile this year compared to last year versus, we saw what we were expecting with the Brazilian populations, and that would actually tell us more about what's going on in the wintering areas specifically than anything else. We also have started working with some diet projects regionally to compare the diets of shorebirds in the Delaware Bay with other stopover locations in Cape Cod and other places. And then just individually, with just what our project can kind of spit out independently, we can collect a lot of different data just due to how much time we're getting out there and how many years this has been going on. So this first figure is something that we calculate for all our species every year, which is the relative weight of our birds on a set date going back decades. So this year you can see our ruddy turnstones from this year in black. On average, were a bit fatter than they have been on average for decades, and that can kind of really quickly let us know, just based on birds in hand, how the foraging environment was for them that year. And if you've ever seen a video of a cannon net shorebird catch, these are not small sample size. I think that catch that's shown on the 20th, we had about almost 900 birds total, probably 300 of them were ruddy turnstones. So these are pretty solid numbers that we're able to put out and look back at huge amounts of time. Within season variation, just from flock counts, so this is the flock counts from one site, and you can see there's an early peak in that blue line, which are sanderling, and a late peak in turnstone, the red line. And that just kind of lets us know on a state management level of what birds are using each area when, because it varies a huge amount over the season. And there's different arrival timings that we can expect. And then that top figure just shows, besides green flags, as in banded in the USA, these are some of the flags that we saw this year. So we saw a large number of Brazilian turnstone, and we were at first thinking, what's going on with that? Quickly, as soon as the season turns out, I figure out that there's a new PhD student working in Brazil flagging birds. So it's like the instant change. It's really funny to get to then go to these meetings and see everybody and find out, oh, she had a massive banding endeavor in Brazil this year, and we were seeing all her birds. So she got to have pretty instant confirmation on quite a lot of her birds had made it that far in their flight. And that kind of brings me to my other topic of, because shorebirds' range is huge, our collaboration ranges have to be huge. And in migratory shorebirds, more than kind of anything else, the Delaware Bay specifically has this incredibly outsized impact. So I'm at meetings with people who are in Alaska and Canada and all the way down in Brazil and Argentina, and everyone wants to know what's going on with our season specifically, because it has so much impact on everywhere else. And that's pretty much all I had for this, but here's, if you wanted to take a photo in case anyone wanted to come down and flag some shorebirds with us. It's the most fun you'll ever have. Thanks.
Wow. Those are three really amazing projects, such a wide range of work that all bands around a few different themes, around environmental quality and action and citizen concerns and putting evidence into action from freshwater systems to offshore canyons. Do we have time for a couple questions? I see that. All right, questions. John.
This is for Rob, and I'm sorry, I missed the first couple of slides of yours, so if you covered this, just tell me to be quiet. Would you attribute more whale deaths to, there's So simple. Sorry. Would you attribute the fact that there's more whale deaths to the fact that there are more whales living? Like, can it be just that simple? I know you said a little bit about there's more effort, there's more reporting, and you're seeing more, especially offshore, but is it that simple? There's more whales dying because there's more whales living?
So to start off, you see I went over time with my answers, so nothing short when I give an answer. But I think that we're seeing more animals here. So I've always used the example of the highway system that we had in the 70s. And, you know, you go down the rest areas now, and they're really nice. They have a lot of food. You can get a vegan meal. You can get whatever. You're going to spend a lot more time there, right? So if you're looking at food in the area, and we know historically these animals pass through the area, but maybe they're staying here longer. So yes, we have humpback whales that were delisted, so you might have more. But what we're trying to understand is how are they using this habitat? And is it just that we have more animals here, or they're staying here longer? I mean, even the whale watch this year is still running out of Montauk because they're still seeing whales. So that's something that's different. The survey that we did in 2004 and 2005, we did it during the winter months to show that whales were here during the winter months and they were farther offshore. So I think that there's the change in how close they're getting to shore. One of the things I've said recently is we don't know a lot about what whales are doing individually, but if you can see them from the shore of Long Island, you know that they did one thing, and that's come across shipping lanes at some point in time. So we're seeing them. That's a change in their in what we see as behavior for our time period. When I talk to, you know, Chief Wallace from the tribe, he's always like, yeah, but not historically. Like, we know that we had them closer to shore. That's why we have shore whaling that was here. So I think that there's a component there that we have more animals that are here. For what driver is there is a little different, but that's what I would expect to see, more animals. I wouldn't expect to see fewer.
Great.
I probably could have said yes or no, right?
Jess has a question. Is this an online question? Not quite ready. I saw one in the back, and then Cindy.
Hi, I have a question for Joe. I've done some work with indigenous tribes before. I was a project intern looking at the restoration of brook trout in some lands being returned to the Onondaga Nation, about 1,000 acres up in upstate New York. And one thing I sort of learned from that experience is there are sort of fundamental cultural gaps and differences in terms of how we do things, especially working in the framework of government. And I just wanted to hear sort of your opinions on how we broach that, especially, I mean, if you look at our history, they have plenty of reason to distrust the government, so yes.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely a really big push right now for tribal data sovereignty. So I think like the fundamental structure of those partnerships is changing, whereas it used to be the tribes leaning on agencies and partners, NGOs, whoever it may be, to kind of do the work but represent the interests of the tribe. Now it feels like there's a lot bigger push for tech transfer and like teaching tribes, which is awesome. It's like, especially in Virginia, I mean, there's 7 federally recognized tribes, and all of us just have like the best partners that we could in the state. A lot of them are super concerned with, again, transferring that technology to us, and not just doing it for us. And so we're actually working right now on like a data sovereignty policy for the tribe, both in the natural resources and the cultural resources departments. So that's a big push right now. And also I think just including traditional ecological knowledge as some sort of component of every study is really important, just because, like you said, that's just how tribes have always done it. They've relied on elders passing down knowledge. And so if those same elders can give that knowledge to inform, more quote unquote technologically modern practices, or, like Western science, basically, the more opportunity there is for that, I think the more comprehensive of an answer we can get when we ask these questions. So, thanks.
Thanks. My question is, I guess, similar, but it's for all of the panelists. Is the data that you shared, is it publicly available, and how long, when would it be available? The whale data, the whale stranding data, the bird data, is that accessible to the public, and when and how do you get it?
You want to go first?
Yeah, for us, all of our data does once it's gone through different approval processes, mainly through USGS, all becomes publicly available. That's just part of they have an open access policy, so I think a lot of the tracking projects that we've previously done with tags that have already been reviewed are publicly available on the website called MoveBank. The tracking data that we currently have going will be eventually. Right now, it's only open to collaborators. But yeah, and a lot of our findings each year get published once they've gone through the entire thing. A man called James Lyons does our population analysis, and he publishes every year a report on the red knot coming through the bay.
And the data from stranding programs we're authorized by NOAA Fisheries to do this work, so they're put into a national database. So, there's many different levels of data, but the basic who, what, when, and where is usually readily available. For us, what we do is when we go out and do a necropsy, obviously it's kind of on the front lines. People are going to ask us what's going on, so we talk about that. The table that you saw is one of the ways that we've been able to put out and say these are our field findings for what we have. So in many cases, you might not have, something that contributed to the animal's death, but we'll put that in there and say undetermined, and then we wait for the pathologist report. So the initial information is always there. The pathology reports and everything else takes a little bit longer to become available. So. Yeah, it should be on our website. I should say this. It should be on our website because I know we put it up there, but one of the biggest challenges that we have is really working at the pace of everything else. In 2023, if you think about having 26 events going on, one every 14 days, I mean, you lost a half a year to just responding to animals in the field. So that's usually where our delays come from. So you could always reach out to us. So.
I'll just add that some of that whale strandings data is available to the public on the Mid-Atlantic Ocean Data Portal. I believe it's a NOAA product that includes data collected from several stranding networks.
Yes. Yeah, from Maine through Virginia.
Okay, we